You believe there's still plenty of time ahead. You believe that 70 is the new 50, or whatever fiction they're peddling these days. You believe that since you're reasonably fit and your intellect remains intact and your existence has finally found some equilibrium, you've got years upon years unfurling before you like an endless weekend. You don't. I've lived through 92 years on this earth. My life began when Harry Truman occupied the White House. I've laid to rest my spouse, my mother and father, a pair of my brothers and sisters, and countless companions whose numbers I've lost track of. And I'm speaking to you now to make one thing clear. Your 60s aren't the dawn of your leisurely retirement. Your 60s represent your final genuine opportunity to get ready for all that lies ahead. And all that lies ahead is more brutal than you anticipate. I worked as a student advisor at a secondary school in Philadelphia for 38 years. I stepped away from my career at 70, meaning I navigated my 60s while gradually leaving my profession behind, supporting my children through their own middle-age crises, and beginning to contemplate what would follow. I believed I was ready. I'd put aside savings. I'd made arrangements. I had a partner I cherished and kids who stayed in touch consistently and grandkids whose faces brightened whenever I appeared. I wasn't ready for anything that came. I wasn't ready for my physical self to begin failing me in irreparable ways. I wasn't ready for the isolation that arrives when the people you care about begin passing away more rapidly than you can absorb each departure. I wasn't ready for my partner of 63 years to collapse fatally in a home improvement store on a Tuesday during the day while I sat at home compiling a shopping list. I wasn't ready for the horror of a cerebrovascular accident, of regaining consciousness in a medical facility unable to control my left half, of understanding I could no longer maintain my own household. So this isn't footage from someone who mastered everything. This is footage from someone who wishes someone had cautioned her. And if you're navigating your 60s at this moment, treat this as your caution. First lesson: your physical form is about to transform in irreversible ways, and you must develop resilience right now while your body can still respond. When I reached 62, I could cover 3 miles on foot effortlessly. I could haul shopping bags upstairs. I could lower myself to the ground to interact with my grandkids and rise again unassisted. I never appreciated any of that because it had simply always been my reality. By 75, completing a mile felt like an achievement. By 80, I required a break midway through climbing the staircase. By 84, a brain hemorrhage claimed whatever remained of my self-sufficiency. This is what they never mention. The lean tissue you shed beyond 60 is nearly unrecoverable. The skeletal density you forfeit is permanently lost. The equilibrium you possessed instinctively begins demanding deliberate concentration. And if you don't actively resist this deterioration, if you don't train and stay mobile and push your physical limits while it still has the capacity to adapt, you're going to pass your 80s and 90s imprisoned within a frame that's incapable of executing what your consciousness demands it accomplish. I observe my great-grandkids sprint through the garden, and I recall when I possessed that ability. I recall when my limbs had power and my spine didn't throb, and rising from a seat wasn't a physical challenge. That version of myself seems like a complete stranger today. I wish I'd shown her body more respect. I wish I'd developed greater strength when the opportunity existed. If you've reached 62 and you still possess the ability to walk, 3 miles without difficulty. Cover that distance daily. Develop the strength today because you're going to require it later. Second lesson, the people in your life are going to begin departing, and you require more connections than you realize. I maintained a tight circle of 4 women I'd been close to since my 30s. We referred to ourselves as the Wednesday crew since we gathered for midday meals every Wednesday. For nearly 4 decades, Ruth, Diane, Patricia, and myself. We navigated parenthood in parallel. We lifted each other up through relationship dissolutions and medical emergencies and losing our own parents. I assumed those bonds would endure indefinitely. Ruth passed in 2008 from cardiac arrest. She'd reached 75. Diane passed in 2014. Malignancy took her at 81. Patricia passed in 2020. The pandemic claimed her at 87. I represent the sole remaining member of the Wednesday crew. I didn't cultivate fresh friendships during my 60s. I assumed I had sufficient connections. I assumed Ruth and Diane and Patricia would remain until my final days. I didn't comprehend that their final days would arrive so much earlier than mine did. Currently I'm 92, and the majority of those who knew me during my youth have vanished. My daughter shows incredible devotion. My grandchildren stop by whenever possible, but it doesn't compare to having a companion who recalls your existence at 35. It doesn't compare to having someone who met your parents, who attended your ceremony, who cradled your newborns, forged friendships throughout your 60s, people your junior, people your senior, fresh acquaintances, any companions whatsoever. Spread your social reach widely because there's no predicting who will remain alive 2 decades from now. The emptiness that comes from surviving everyone you've cherished represents something I wouldn't inflict upon another soul. Third lesson, engage in the discussions regarding mortality and finances immediately while everyone retains the health to participate. When my mother reached 89, she suffered a neurological event that destroyed her ability to communicate. She survived an additional 3 years, and we remained completely uncertain about her wishes. Did she desire life support through machinery? Did she prefer intensive intervention or palliative measures? Where had she stored her legal documents? What were her account credentials? We navigated those 3 years speculating, arguing amongst ourselves, making choices completely blind. I promised myself I wouldn't inflict that burden on my children, yet I nearly replicated the pattern because discussing mortality creates discomfort, because nobody desires to gather their offspring and state explicitly, "This is my directive for when I'm approaching death. This is the location of our assets. This is the distribution plan." It seems dark and morbid. It seems unnecessarily early. It seems like you're welcoming death through the entrance. But death approaches regardless of any welcome, and without these explicit discussions. While you maintain the capacity for them, you're creating chaos for those who care about you. I finally initiated the discussion with Sarah and David when I'd reached 74. I should have managed it at 64. I should have addressed it the instant I became a grandmother and recognized there were individuals whose lives my death would impact. Don't postpone until illness strikes. Don't postpone until emergency situations arise. Initiate the discussion immediately. Fourth lesson, leaving your career won't rescue you, it'll reveal you. I dedicated my entire professional life anticipating retirement. No additional dawn risings, no additional challenging pupils, no additional administrative tasks. I intended to explore the world and cultivate plants and consume all the literature I'd been postponing. I anticipated finally possessing free time. I departed my career at 70 and I completely unraveled. I couldn't recognize my identity beyond my profession. For 38 years, I'd existed as Mrs. Henderson, the student advisor. That represented my core identity. That represented my reason for being. And abruptly, I transformed into just Martha, an elderly woman without any specific purpose and without any specific destination. Rediscovering myself required 3 years. 3 years experiencing worthlessness and disorientation before I uncovered my passion for creating watercolor paintings, my passion for contributing time at the public library, my passion for sharing midday meals with my daughter on Wednesdays without justification. But those 3 years contained profound darkness. Robert felt concerned about my state. My children felt concerned about my state. I felt concerned about my own state. If you're currently in your 60s and your employment defines your entire existence, you're approaching a precipice. Begin constructing an existence beyond your workplace immediately. Cultivate interests and pastimes. Preserve your friendships. Determine what brings you fulfillment beyond your salary, because the moment you conclude your career, you'll require an identity, and without constructing that identity beforehand, you'll become emptiness itself. Fifth lesson, your remaining time with your partner is less than you imagine, and the majority won't resemble the vigorous, active period you're envisioning. Robert and I shared 63 years of marriage. That sounds substantial. It is substantial. But examining the mathematics shatters my spirit. The initial 2 decades we existed as young people constructing our existence and nurturing children. We maintained such hectic schedules we scarcely found moments for one another. The subsequent 15 years encompassed that awful phase when dissolution seemed imminent and then the difficult process of reconstruction. Not until we'd reached our 50s did we achieve a genuinely fulfilling marriage, and by that point perhaps 30 years remained between us. From those 30 years, a single decade was characterized by health and vitality. We explored destinations, we delighted in our grandchildren, we possessed vigor and inquisitiveness and capable bodies. Then Robert began his decline. Then my stroke occurred. The final decade of our union, we spent managing deterioration, medical consultations and pharmaceuticals, and the progressive limitation of our shared capabilities. I'm not suggesting those years lacked value. They held tremendous value. I'd sacrifice anything to have Robert return to me. Even confined to a wheelchair, even mentally clouded, even in his final moments. But I wish I'd comprehended during my 60s that the opportunity for exploration was shutting. I wish we'd embarked on additional journeys, remained out beyond our usual hours, accepted additional social opportunities. I wish I hadn't presumed we possessed infinite healthy years remaining. You possess nothing of the sort, nobody does. Utilize the prime years during their existence. Sixth lesson, extend forgiveness to everyone immediately because the opportunity won't last forever. My brother Gerald and I severed communication for 8 years. The rupture stemmed from a meaningless dispute regarding our mother's treatment, regarding financial matters, regarding issues that felt monumentally significant during that period. I'd reached 67 when our communication ceased. I maintained absolute certainty of my correctness. I maintained absolute certainty he owed me contrition. Gerald died from cardiac failure at 79. His death occurred during our continued silence, and currently I'll never possess the opportunity to express my regret. I'll never possess the opportunity to perceive his voice once more. I'll never possess the opportunity to occupy a chair opposite him during celebratory gatherings and exchange knowing glances at identical family narratives we'd absorbed countless times. 8 years of mutual silence for what purpose? For ego, for vindication, for declining to initiate reconciliation. If there exists someone you've stopped communicating with, someone you cherish who caused you pain or whom you injured, make the call this very day, not the following day, not during the approaching week. This very day, because people's lives terminate and they don't pause for your readiness. They don't pause for the ideal circumstances or the flawless apology. They simply depart and they remove your opportunity along with them. 7th lesson, your grown children don't require your guidance. They require your company. I dedicated my 60s dispensing guidance to my children regarding their professional paths, their relationships, their child-rearing approaches. I possessed 38 years of professional experience as a student advisor. I possessed knowledge. I possessed insight to offer. They had no interest in my insight. They desired my physical presence as their mother, not their advisor. They desired my assistance holding their infants and consuming meals at their homes and inquiring about their experiences without attempting to resolve anything. Each instance I provided unrequested guidance, I communicated to them my lack of faith in their capacity to resolve matters independently. Not until my 70s did I acquire the ability to maintain silence, to absorb without solving, to remain present without exerting control. And by that stage, I'd inflicted such damage on my relationship with David that we experienced 7 years without contact. Your grown children have reached adulthood. They don't require your instructions about proper behavior. They require your affection during their self-discovery process. That demands greater effort than dispensing guidance, but it represents their genuine need. 8th lesson. Document everything because your memory will fail you regarding everything. I've been blessed with 11 grandchildren and 6 great-grandchildren. I'm incapable of recalling all their birth dates without consulting the record I maintain in my bedside table. I'm incapable of recalling yesterday's morning meal. I'm incapable of recalling discussions from the previous week. This represents standard aging. This represents every brain's fate given sufficient longevity, but it generates genuine terror, and without preparation, you'll forfeit matters of significance. Document your recollections. Document your family narratives. Document the culinary techniques your mother demonstrated and the manner of your father's laughter and your childhood pet's name. Document what you desire your grandchildren to understand regarding your identity before age defined you. I initiated maintaining a personal journal when I reached 78. I wish I'd begun at 60. I've forfeited countless recollections beyond recovery. recollections that existed exclusively within my consciousness and have currently vanished eternally. Don't permit that outcome for yourself. Ninth lesson, you're going to experience fear, and bravery means proceeding regardless. I experienced profound terror regarding aging, terror regarding losing Robert, terror regarding solitude, regarding illness, regarding dependency on others. I navigated my 60s attempting to avoid contemplating it, as though disregarding my terror would eliminate it. It persisted regardless. Every feared outcome materialized. Robert passed away. My stroke occurred. My independence vanished. I currently reside with my daughter because independent living became impossible. Every terror became reality, and I continue existing. I continue being myself. I continue finding amusement in my granddaughter's humor and anticipating my great-grandson's arrivals and appreciating quality coffee during morning hours. The circumstances I feared didn't demolish me. They altered me. They reduced me in certain respects, but they didn't eliminate me. You're going to encounter loss and decline and mortality. You cannot circumvent it, but you can confront it with bravery rather than refusal to accept reality. You can prepare yourself rather than maintaining the pretense it'll never arrive, and upon its arrival you can uncover that your resilience exceeds your expectations. 10th lesson, and this represents the one demanding your complete attention. The final 3 decades progressed more rapidly than the initial 6. I experienced a momentary lapse and reached 70. I experienced another lapse and reached 80. I experienced another lapse and Robert had departed, and I'd reached 90 and subsequently 92. And currently I'm positioned here questioning where everything vanished. During youth, time progresses gradually because everything represents novelty. During old age, time accelerates because you've witnessed everything previously. The seasonal cycles merge together. The years compress into one another. You regain consciousness one morning and comprehend a decade has elapsed and you cannot explain it. I'm not sharing this to generate fear. I'm sharing this to encourage your attention. Direct your attention to your 60s. Direct your attention to your 70s. Direct your attention to every individual day, because it's accelerating beyond your comprehension, and you cannot decelerate it, and you cannot recover any portion. My partner Robert departed 6 years previously, 63 years together, and subsequently he vanished within 45 minutes. A cardiovascular emergency in the plumbing section of the home improvement store. That's his final location, encircled by PVC tubing and copper connectors. He'd worked as a plumber throughout 40 years. He would have found that circumstance amusing. I communicate with him nightly before sleep arrives. I share my daily experiences. I share information regarding the grandchildren. I express my longing. He provides no response, but I continue my monologue regardless, because that represents love's transformation, a monologue directed towards someone who's permanently absent. I've survived 92 years. I possess a photograph of Robert on the surface behind my position. I've outlasted nearly everyone who ever mattered to me. And if time reversal became possible to my 60s, if I could position myself opposite that woman who assumed unlimited time remained available, I would grasp her shoulders physically, and I would communicate, pay attention to my words. It accelerates more rapidly than comprehension allows. So maintain awareness, remain engaged, vocalize your affection, embark on the journey, initiate the conversation, release the resentment, because eventually you'll reach 92 and exist alone within your daughter's residential space, addressing recording equipment, maintaining hope that someone listening comprehends you before the opportunity expires. Don't squander your 60s the manner I squandered mine. You retain some time remaining, but significantly less than you believe.